Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. Have you ever walked past a locked door and felt like something on the other side knew you were there? I don't mean that in a poetic way. I mean the kind of feeling where your skin tightens for no reason and your brain starts giving you excuses before you even ask for them. Bad wiring, old pipes, wind in the walls, a building settling. That's what I told myself about room 212. For weeks. My name is Daniel. I was 26 when this happened, and at the time I was working as the night auditor at a roadside motel just outside of Russellville, Arkansas. It was one of those places you only stay at because you're too tired to keep driving. 2 floors, faded yellow exterior, ice machine that sounded like it was dying, vending machines that took your money half the time, and a pool that had been covered so long the tarp had turned almost black. The place was called the Bramble Inn, which made it sound nicer than it was. It sat right off the highway, between a gas station and an empty lot where a Waffle House had burned down years earlier. Truckers came through. Families passing through came through. Sometimes couples who didn't want to be seen together came through. Most nights were boring, which was exactly how I liked it. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'd check in late arrivals, fold towels when housekeeping got behind, print reports, and sit behind the front desk with bad coffee and whatever true crime podcast I had playing quietly from my phone. I didn't believe in ghosts. I want to say that clearly. I believed in faulty wiring, drunk guests, people lying to get refunds, and old buildings making old building noises. That was about it. Room 212 was the only part of the motel nobody used. It was at the far end of the second floor hallway, past the soda machine, and the stairwell nobody liked using because the light flickered. The door was painted the same dull brown as all the others, but unlike the others, it had no room number plate. There was just a pale rectangle where the numbers had been removed. And across the door, management had screwed in a thick metal bar, the kind you'd use to keep a storage room shut. There was also a small sign that said, "Out of order. Do not enter." I asked about it my first week. My manager, Sheila, was in her 50s, smoked menthol cigarettes behind the laundry room, and had the permanently tired eyes of someone who had worked customer service too long. She didn't look up from the computer when I asked. "Fire," she said. "That room caught fire? Years ago. Why not fix it?" She sighed like I'd asked something deeply annoying. Owners are cheap. Insurance was a mess. Nobody wants to spend money on a room at a motel nobody wants to stay in anyway. That made sense. Cheap motel, sealed room, old damage, nothing mysterious. At least not at first. The first complaint came on a Wednesday night in February. It was raining hard enough that every car passing on the highway sounded like it was dragging chains behind it. Around 2:15 a.m., the phone at the front desk rang. I picked up. "Front desk, this is Daniel." There was a woman breathing hard on the other end. "Can you please do something about the crying?" I looked at the room chart. "Sorry, what room are you in?" 210. Room 210 was upstairs, 2 doors down from 212. "What kind of crying?" "A woman," she said. "Or maybe a kid. I don't know. It's been going on for 20 minutes. I rubbed my eyes. "Is it coming from next door?" There was a pause. Then she said very quietly, "It's coming from the room with the blocked door." I remember looking up from the desk, like I expected someone to be standing across the lobby. "The closed room?" I asked. "Yes, the one at the end." I told her I'd check it out. I grabbed the master key, mostly out of habit, and went upstairs. The second floor hallway smelled like damp carpet and cleaning spray. The lights buzzed overhead. Rain ticked against the windows at the far end. The closer I got to 212, the quieter the building seemed. That sounds dramatic, but it was true. The vending machine hum faded behind me. The TV noise from other rooms disappeared. Even the rain seemed softer. I stopped outside the barred door and listened. Nothing. No crying. No footsteps. No TV. No whispering. just the dull electric buzz of the hallway lights. I leaned closer. Still nothing. I knocked once, feeling stupid. "Hello?" No answer. I checked the metal bar. Solid. The padlock was old but intact. The door didn't move when I pressed my shoulder into it. I went back to 210 and knocked gently. The woman opened the door only a crack. She was maybe in her 30s, wearing a college sweatshirt, eyes red from lack of sleep. "I didn't hear anything," I told her. Her face changed. Not angry. Worse. Embarrassed. "Of course," she said. "Of course it stopped when you came up." I offered to move her room, and she accepted before I even finished the sentence. I put her downstairs in 104. The rest of the night passed quietly. I told myself she'd probably heard pipes or a TV from another room bouncing through the walls. Old motels are like that. Sounds travel in strange ways. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time it was a trucker in room 209. Big guy. Beard. Quiet voice. He came down to the lobby around 3 a.m. with his boots unlaced and his jacket half-zipped. "Someone's crying upstairs," he said. I asked where. He pointed toward the ceiling. "That room at the end. The shut one." I felt annoyed before I felt scared. "Did you actually see someone?" "No." "Did it sound like it could have been outside?" He stared at me. "Son," he said, "I've slept in truck stops from here to Nevada. I know outside noise. That was inside the room." I went up with him that time. Again, nothing. The hallway was empty. Room 212 was sealed. No sound came from behind it. The trucker stood beside me, arms crossed, looking at that door like he hated it. Then he said something I still think about. It stopped when it hurt us. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Except there were no footsteps. Just the ice machine kicking on downstairs. After that, I started noticing things. Small things. The air near room 212 was always warmer than the rest of the hall. Not hot, just slightly warmer, like somebody had left a heater running inside. Sometimes there was a faint smell near the door too. Not smoke exactly, more like wet ashes and cheap floral soap. Housekeeping refused to go near it. One morning, I joked about the complaints to Maria, one of the housekeepers. She had worked there for 8 years and didn't scare easily. She once found a live snake in a bathtub and just called maintenance like it was normal. When I mentioned room 212, she stopped folding sheets. "Don't mess with that door," she said. I laughed. "Why?" Sheila said it was just a fire. Maria didn't smile. "It was a fire." "Okay, but that's not why they keep it closed." She wouldn't say anything else. I asked Sheila about it the next night. She got irritated. "Maria talks too much. So there's more to it?" Sheila took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "The room caught fire. A woman died. That's it." I went quiet. Up until then, I had pictured electrical damage. Burn marks. Maybe a guest smoking in bed and ruining the carpet. I hadn't pictured someone dying. Sheila must have seen my face because her voice softened a little. "It was before my time managing here. Before yours. Before most people here. It's sad, but it's not your problem." "What happened?" "Officially, accidental fire. And unofficially?" She stared at me for a long second. Then she put her glasses back on. "Don't start digging into things that won't help you sleep. That should have been enough for me. But when you work nights, boredom becomes its own kind of sickness. Your mind needs something to chew on. And once room 212 got into my head, I couldn't leave it alone. I searched old local news articles on my phone during slow hours. It didn't take long to find it. A small article from 11 years earlier. Fire at Bramble and leaves 1 dead. The woman's name was Elise Warren, 32 years old, traveling alone. Found in room 212 after firefighters put out a small fire. Smoke inhalation was listed as the cause of death. There wasn't much else, but there was one line at the bottom that made my stomach tighten. Police were called to the motel twice earlier that evening regarding noise complaints from neighboring guests. Noise complaints. I read that line 5 or 6 times. The next week, the crying got worse. It started happening almost every other night. Guests complained from 210, 209, sometimes 214. Always after 2 a.m. Always crying. Sometimes soft. Sometimes loud enough that people came downstairs angry, asking what kind of place we were running. And every time I went up, it stopped. I began recording the hallway on my phone whenever I checked. Nothing ever showed up clearly, just a dim hallway, buzzing lights, and that sealed door. But once, around 3:18 a.m., I recorded something strange. I didn't notice it until I watched the video later. As I stood outside 212, the camera pointed at the door. There was a sound so faint I almost missed it. 3 soft knocks. From inside the room. Knock, knock, knock. Then my own voice in the recording whispering, "Nope." I didn't remember saying that. The morning after, I told Sheila I wanted the key to the padlock. She stared at me like I'd asked for a gun. Absolutely not. Guests are complaining. We're moving people. Giving refunds. It's affecting business. That part got her attention. Still, she shook her head. That room is sealed for a reason. Because of fire damage? Because the owners don't want anyone in there. Then call them. She lowered her voice. "Daniel, leave it alone." I should have. I know that. But fear does something strange when it sits too long. It starts turning into anger. You get tired of being scared. Tired of looking over your shoulder. Tired of letting a closed door control your whole night. The final complaint came from a family in room 214. A father came down carrying his little boy. The kid had his face buried in his dad's shoulder and was crying so hard he could barely breathe. The father was furious. He said his son had woken up because a woman was crying in the hall. When he opened the door, he saw someone standing outside room 212. A woman in a white nightgown, facing the sealed door. He said when he asked if she needed help, she turned her head toward him. Not her body, just her head. And then she walked straight through the door. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. The father looked at me like he already knew how insane it sounded. "I'm not asking for a refund," he said. "I'm leaving." And he did. At 4 a.m., they packed their car in the rain and drove away. I watched their taillights disappear onto the highway, and something in me snapped. I went to the maintenance closet behind the laundry room. The keys were in a metal lockbox mounted to the wall. Sheila kept the code written under the desk calendar because she trusted nobody and also had a terrible memory. I found the padlock key on a ring labeled second floor storage. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped it twice. I remember telling myself I wasn't going to open the room all the way. I was just going to unlock the bar, crack the door, prove it was empty, and be done. That was the lie that got me upstairs. The hallway felt longer than usual. Every step sounded too loud. The carpet muffled most of it, but I could still hear the soft press of my shoes, the jingle of the keys in my hand, my own breathing. The air near 212 was warm, warmer than before, and the smell was stronger. Ashes, soap, something else underneath, something sweet and stale. I slid the key into the padlock. For a second, I thought it wouldn't turn. Then it clicked. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. That's not me being poetic. That's exactly what happened. The moment I pulled the metal bar aside and opened the door, I stepped in maybe 2 feet. Just enough for the door to swing behind me. And it shut, not slammed. Clicked, like someone had gently pulled it closed. The first thing I noticed was that room 212 was not burned. I had expected black walls, melted lamps, exposed beams, a ruined mattress. Instead, the room looked freshly cleaned. The bed was made with white sheets tucked tight under the mattress. The pillows were fluffed. The carpet had vacuum lines in it, perfect stripes leading toward the window. The old box TV was on. Static filled the screen, gray and white crawling over itself, casting a flickering light across the room. The curtains were closed. The air was warm, almost humid. I stood there with the keys in one hand and my phone in the other, unable to move. Then I heard crying. Not from the walls, not from another room, from the bathroom. The door was half open, and there was a thin line of yellow light coming from inside. A woman was crying softly. The sound was so human that for one stupid second, I thought someone might actually be in there. A guest, a homeless person, someone who had found a way in. "Hello," I said. The crying stopped. The TV static popped. I took one step backward, reaching for the door handle behind me. It didn't turn. I tried again. Locked. That was impossible. Motel doors don't lock from the outside when you're inside. Not like that. Not with no deadbolt thrown. I pulled harder. Nothing. The bathroom door creaked open another inch. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. "Is someone there?" I asked, and my voice sounded thin and childish. From the bathroom, a woman whispered. I called twice. I froze. Not screamed. Not ran. Just froze, because my brain couldn't decide what to do with those words. I called twice. The article. Police called to the motel twice earlier that evening. My phone screen lit up in my hand. No signal. That didn't make sense either. I always had service upstairs. Weak, but enough. Then the TV changed. The static cut out, and a black and white image appeared. Grainy. Crooked. Like security camera footage. It showed the motel hallway outside room 212. From the angle, it looked like the camera was mounted high in the corner. And in the footage, I saw myself standing outside the door. Only I wasn't alone. Behind me, maybe 6 feet away, stood a woman. Her hair was wet and dark around her face. She wore a pale nightgown, stained gray down the front. Her head was tilted slightly, like she was listening to something inside the walls. In the footage, I unlocked the padlock. The woman took one step closer to me. On the TV, I saw myself open the door. The woman leaned close to my ear. And then in the room behind me, a whisper said, "Don't let him in." The bathroom light went out. The TV snapped back to static. I don't remember making the decision to kick the door. I just did it. Once. Twice. My shoulder hit it next, hard enough that pain shot down my arm. I yelled for help, but my voice sounded swallowed by the room. Like the walls were packed with wet cotton. Then something moved under the sheets. Slowly. The bed, which had been flat and neat, began to rise in the middle. Not much at first. Just a small lift beneath the blanket. Then more. Like someone underneath was sitting up. I lost whatever courage I had left. I grabbed the bedside lamp and swung it at the window. The lamp bounced off the glass the first time, nearly flying out of my hands. The second swing cracked it. The third broke it inward with a sound so sharp it snapped me back into myself. Cold rain blew into the room. I shoved the curtains aside and looked down. Second floor. Not a clean jump. But below the window was the slanted roof over the check-in entrance. I climbed out without thinking. Glass cut my palm. Rain hit my face. My shoe slipped on the wet ledge, and for one awful second, I thought I was going to fall backward into the room. Something grabbed my shirt from behind. Not hard, just enough to stop me. A hand, cold through the fabric, pressed between my shoulder blades, and a woman's voice whispered right next to my ear, "He's still here." I threw myself forward. I landed on the awning so hard the breath left my body. Pain exploded in my ribs. I slid down the wet slope, clawing at nothing, and fell off the edge onto the pavement below. I don't remember hitting the ground. I remember the rain. I remember lying on my side, staring up at the second floor window. Room 212's curtains were open. A woman stood behind the broken glass. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking over her shoulder, back into the room. Like something else was in there with her. Then the curtains closed. When I woke up, there were police lights flashing across the motel sign. Apparently, a guest in room 108 had heard glass break and called 911. I had a cracked rib, a sprained wrist, and cuts on my hand and cheek. Sheila arrived around 6 a.m., pale and shaking with anger. The police went upstairs. They found the padlock open. The metal bar moved aside. But room 212 was empty. Not clean. Empty. Burned. Destroyed. Exactly the way it should have looked. Black walls, melted carpet, ceiling stained dark from smoke. No bed, no TV, no bathroom light, no curtains. The window was broken though. They couldn't explain that part. They also couldn't explain why the inside handle of the door had been tied shut with a length of old electrical cord. That detail never made the official report, as far as I know. The owners came 2 days later. Not one owner. 3 of them. Men in expensive jackets who looked deeply irritated that they had to stand inside their own motel. They shut the place down for renovations within a week. I never went back. Sheila called me once after it happened. She didn't apologize exactly. She just said, "I told you to leave it alone." I asked her who Elise meant when she said, "Don't let him in." She was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "There was a man staying with her, or visiting her. Depends who you asked." That wasn't in the article. No. What happened to him? They never found him. I felt cold all over. She called the front desk twice, Sheila said. The night she died, complained someone was trying to get into her room. The night auditor thought it was a domestic argument, told her to keep it down or leave. I didn't say anything. She was dead before the fire started, Sheila said. My throat tightened. I thought it was smoke inhalation. That's what they printed. Then she hung up. That was 8 years ago. I don't work nights anymore. I don't stay in roadside motels unless I absolutely have to. And when I do, I check the room first. Closets, bathroom, windows, the lock, everything. I know how that sounds. People who haven't felt that kind of fear always think fear is loud. Screaming, running, chaos. But real fear can be quiet. It can be standing in a warm motel room, listening to a woman cry behind a bathroom door. It can be a TV turning on by itself. It can be a bed that should not exist, still holding the shape of someone who just got up. Every now and then, I look up the Bramble Inn. The building is still there, but it has a different name now. New paint, new sign, better photos online. They even advertise renovated rooms and free breakfast. But in the pictures of the second-floor hallway, if you zoom in all the way at the far end, there's a door with no number on it. And there's always a cleaning cart parked in front of it. Maybe that's nothing. Maybe it's storage now. Maybe the owners finally fixed it and moved on. But sometimes I think about the last thing I saw before those curtains closed. That woman in the window, looking back into the room. Not at me, not asking me to stay, warning me to leave. And I think the worst part wasn't realizing room 212 was occupied. It was realizing she wasn't the guest they were trying to keep inside. Story 2. Have you ever met someone who looked like they belonged in the wrong year? Not dressed vintage on purpose, not one of those people who buys old clothes and thinks it makes them interesting. I mean someone who feels misplaced, like the world moved on without them, but somehow they kept showing up anyway. I worked the front desk at a roadside motel in western Pennsylvania when I was 24. This was back in 2019, before everything shut down and before I finally quit night shifts for good. The motel was called the Briar Glen Motor Lodge, which made it sound much nicer than it was. It sat off a two-lane highway between a gas station and a closed-down diner with a cracked sign that still said open, even though it hadn't been open in years. Truckers used us. Traveling nurses used us. People having affairs used us. And once in a while, families would stop there because they were too tired to drive another mile. I worked Fridays, Saturdays, and some Sundays from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. The kind of shift where time feels broken. You drink too much burnt coffee, watch the moths throw themselves against the office window, and listen to vending machines hum like they're alive. Most nights were boring. Then there was the couple in room 12. I first noticed them in late October. It was raining that night, the cold sideways kind that makes headlights smear across the pavement. I was watching an old sitcom on the tiny lobby TV when the bell above the door jingled. A man and woman stepped inside. They were probably in their late 30s, maybe early 40s. The man wore a dark wool coat and had neatly combed brown hair. The woman had pale blonde hair pinned back with a clip, and she wore a cream-colored cardigan over a blue dress. Not weird, Just old-fashioned. They were both smiling, but not warmly. More like they'd practiced it. The man said, "Good evening. We'd like a room for the night, please." His voice was soft, calm. I asked for an ID and a card. He handed me a driver's license with the name Michael Harris. The woman stood beside him with her hands folded in front of her, staring at the candy rack near the counter. "Any room preference?" I asked. The man looked at me. "Room 12, if it's available." That made me pause. Room 12 wasn't special. It was at the far end of the first row, near the ice machine. The carpet was old, the bathroom fan rattled, and the window lock had been replaced twice. Nobody requested room 12. I checked the system. It was open. "Lucky you," I said, trying to be friendly. The woman looked at me then. Her eyes were light gray, almost colorless. She said, "We always are." I remember that because it didn't sound like a joke. They paid, took one key card, and walked back out into the rain. Through the office window, I watched them cross the parking lot under one umbrella. They didn't run or hurry. They moved slowly, in perfect step with each other, like people in a wedding march. I told myself it was nothing. Couples are strange. Night shifts make everything feel stranger than it is. The next Friday they came back. Different names. This time the ID said Daniel Porter. Same man, same woman, same clothes, or close enough that I couldn't tell the difference. "Room 12, please," he said. I looked at the ID, then at him. Now, motel workers see fake names all the time. People book rooms under their middle names, use expired cards, pay cash, lie about pets, lie about extra guests. You learn not to care unless it becomes your problem. "Still," I said, "have you stayed with us before?" The woman smiled. "Oh, many times." Something about the way she said it made my skin tighten. I gave them the room. The third Friday, I was ready for them. They came in at 9:17 p.m. I know because I wrote it down on a sticky note beside the keyboard. Same couple, same polite smiles, same request. Room 12. The name that night was Edward Lowe. I watched their hands this time. No wedding rings, even though they acted married. No phones. No luggage except a small brown suitcase the man carried in his left hand. Not a roller bag. An actual suitcase with metal clasps. When they left the office, my coworker Tasha came out from the back room, chewing on a straw. "You're making that face again," she said. "What face?" "The one where you think you're in a documentary." I told her about them. She laughed at first, then leaned over the counter and looked out at room 12. "People are weird," she said. "Could be role play. Could be cheating. Could be they like that room because it's far from the office." "Different IDs every time?" She shrugged. "Could be fake. Could be criminals. Don't make eye contact and don't get stabbed. That's my policy." That was Tasha, practical to the point of being useless. But the next week, she saw them herself, and she stopped laughing. It was November by then. The trees behind the motel were bare, and every gust of wind sent leaves scraping across the lot like fingernails. The couple arrived later than usual, around 11:30. This time they were Paul and Linda Beck. Tasha was standing next to me when they checked in. I could feel her watching them. The man signed the register. The woman stared at Tasha with that same still smile. "Cold night," Tasha said, because she hated silence. The woman replied, "It always is here." "Not tonight." "Here." After they walked out, Tasha whispered, "Okay, I hate them." I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but something about room 12 suddenly felt like a dark spot at the edge of my vision. Even when I wasn't looking at it, I knew it was there. Over the next month, they came every Friday. Never missed one. Always checked in between 9 and midnight. Always different names. Always room 12. Always gone by morning before housekeeping arrived. And the weirdest part was the room itself. Housekeeping said it never looked used. The bed was slept in, technically. A slight dent in the blanket. A crease on one pillow. But the towels were untouched. The soaps unopened. No trash. No smell of food, perfume, cigarettes, anything. Just once, our housekeeper Maria found something on the nightstand. A photo. It was black and white, curled at the edges. It showed a man and woman standing outside the motel office. The Briar Glen sign was behind them, but it looked newer, brighter. The parking lot wasn't paved yet. There were old cars in the background, big square ones from decades ago. Maria brought it to the front desk. "Guests left this," she said. I picked it up. My heart sank into my stomach. It was them, the same couple, same faces, same hair, same stiff smiles. I flipped the photo over, hoping there'd be a date, a note, anything. There was one line written in faded blue ink. Friday again. I showed it to our manager, Mr. Vance. He was in his 60s, smelled like aftershave and cigarettes, and had owned the motel since the late 90s. He stared at the picture for a long time, then took off his glasses. "Where did you get this?" "Room 12. He didn't say anything. "Do you know them?" I asked. He looked toward the window, toward the row of rooms. "No," he said, but he said it too fast. That night, after he left, I did something I probably shouldn't have. The motel had a storage room behind the laundry area where old records were kept. Most of it was junk. Tax boxes, broken lamps, faded bedspreads, old guest books from before everything went digital. I waited until around 1 a.m., when the parking lot was quiet and the only occupied rooms were 6, 9, and 12. Then I went back there with my phone flashlight. The room smelled like dust, detergent, and wet cardboard. I found a stack of old ledgers in a filing cabinet, the kind with handwritten check-ins. I started with the most recent, then went backward. 2008, 2009, 2010, and there they were. Room 12. Every Friday. Different names. Sometimes the handwriting changed depending on who worked the desk, but the pattern was the same. A man and a woman. One night. Room 12. Paid cash. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe different couples. Maybe some local tradition. Maybe my brain was connecting things because I wanted a story. Then I found the 1987 ledger. Friday, October 23rd, 1987. Room 12. Mr. and Mrs. Harris. My hands went cold. Harris was the first name they had used with me. I kept flipping. November 6th, Room 12. Porter. November 13th, Room 12. Lowe. The same names. The same order. That was the moment I felt something shift in me. Not fear exactly. Not yet. More like the floor had tilted under my feet, and I was trying to stand normally. I took pictures of the pages with my phone. Then I heard the laundry room door open. I turned off my flashlight. For a few seconds, there was only the hum of the dryer and my own breathing. Then a voice called softly from the other side of the shelves. "Looking for something?" It was the woman. I didn't move. I could see part of her through a gap between two boxes. Cream cardigan, pale hand resting on the edge of a shelf. My throat locked. She said, "People always look backward when they should be minding the front desk." I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe 5 seconds. Maybe 30. Then the office phone rang. The sound made me jump so hard I hit my shoulder on the filing cabinet. When I looked through the gap again, she was gone. I ran back to the front desk. I actually ran, like a little kid running up basement stairs after turning off the light. The phone was still ringing. I picked it up. Briar Glen Motor Lodge. I said, barely able to breathe. A man's voice answered. "Room 12 needs fresh towels." It was him. I looked at the security monitor behind the desk. The camera for the back hallway showed nothing. The camera pointed at room 12 showed the door closed. I didn't respond. He said, "Could you bring them yourself?" Then the line clicked dead. I called Tasha. She didn't answer. I called Mr. Vance. He answered on the 5th ring, angry and half asleep, until I told him what happened. Then he went quiet. "Lock the office," he said. "What?" "Lock the office door. Don't go to room 12. Don't leave the desk." "Mr. Vance, what is going on?" He sighed, and suddenly he sounded very old. "They were coming here before I bought the place," he said. "The previous owner told me not to rent room 12 on Fridays." I felt my pulse in my ears. "And you still did?" I thought he was drunk. Or crazy. Then they showed up my first Friday. I looked out the window at room 12. The curtain was open just a crack. A thin slice of yellow light cut across the glass. Mr. Vance continued. Sometimes they stop for a while. A few months. A year. Then they start again. Same room. Same night. I tried refusing once. What happened? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, my night clerk disappeared. The office suddenly felt too small. What do you mean disappeared? I mean he closed shift on Friday and never came home. His car was still in the lot. Keys on the desk. Police found nothing. I wanted to say he was lying. I wanted to believe this was some cruel old man prank. But my hands were shaking so badly I had to set the phone down on speaker. What do I do? I asked. Stay in the office. I'm coming. He lived 20 minutes away. For the next few minutes, nothing happened. That was somehow worse. The TV played softly. Rain ticked against the glass. The neon vacancy sign buzzed outside like an insect. Then the key drop slot beside the door rattled. I stared at it. A white envelope slid through and landed on the floor. I didn't pick it up at first. Then I saw my name written on the front. Not my first name from my employee badge. My full name. I backed away from it. The office door handle turned once. Slowly. I had locked it. I know I had locked it. The handle stopped, then turned the other way. A soft knock followed. 3 taps. I didn't breathe. The woman's voice came from outside. We know you're frightened. I stepped behind the counter and grabbed the little can of pepper spray Tasha kept near the register. The man said, there's no reason to be rude. We've always been good guests. I looked at the security monitor. They were standing right outside the office door, but the camera showed them wrong. On the monitor, they weren't standing there as they looked in real life. The feed was black and white, even though our cameras were color. Their clothes looked different too. Older. The man wore a wide tie and a long coat. The woman's hair was curled around her face like in an old photograph. Then the screen flickered and they were normal again. The woman leaned close to the glass. Her eyes didn't blink. Room 12 is ready, she said. I don't know why that sentence scared me more than anything else. Maybe because it sounded like an invitation. Or a threat. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked once from the lock, and I realized the deadbolt had started turning by itself. I grabbed the desk phone and dialed 911. The operator asked for my emergency. I whispered, there are people trying to get into the office. The lock clicked again. The operator told me to stay on the line. The door opened 2 inches. Cold air slipped in. I sprayed before I even saw a face. I emptied half the can through the crack. Someone made a sharp sound. Not a scream. More like surprise. Then I shoved the door with my shoulder and slammed it shut. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely flip the deadbolt back. The knocking stopped. For maybe 10 seconds, there was silence. Then the man laughed. Not loud. Not crazy. Just a quiet, polite laugh. Like I had told a joke at dinner. I heard footsteps move away from the door. I looked at the monitor. They were walking across the parking lot toward room 12. But they weren't alone anymore. There was someone behind them. A young man in a motel uniform. Walking slowly, head down, following them like he was half asleep. I recognized the uniform from old staff photos in the hallway. Brown vest. White shirt. Name tag. My stomach turned. The young man stopped outside room 12 and turned toward the camera. His face was blurry on the screen, but I could tell he was looking straight at me. Then the couple opened the door. All 3 went inside. The lights in room 12 went out. By the time the police arrived 7 minutes later, Mr. Vance was pulling into the lot behind them. The officers checked room 12 first. Empty. Bed untouched. Towels folded. No suitcase. No couple. No young man. The window was locked from the inside. One officer clearly thought I was high. The other was nicer, but not much more helpful. I showed them the envelope with my name on it. Inside was an old key. Not a key card. A real brass motel key with a diamond-shaped plastic tag. Room 12. On the back, scratched into the plastic, were 2 words. Next Friday. The police took a report. They took the envelope. They looked at the ledgers, but you could tell they didn't know what to do with any of it. Mr. Vance closed the motel for 2 weeks after that. I quit the next morning. I didn't even pick up my last check in person. I made him mail it. A few months later, I tried looking up the missing night clerk. His name was Andrew Kessler. He disappeared in 1998, age 22. The article said he was last seen working overnight at the Briar Glen Motor Lodge. His car was found in the parking lot. No signs of a struggle. I found his photo. Same face I saw on the monitor. I wish I could tell you the motel burned down or got demolished or that room 12 was sealed off forever. But it wasn't. It stayed open for another year under new management. Then it got bought by some developer and turned into short-term rentals. Cute little roadside cabins for weekend travelers. They painted the doors red and put flower boxes under the windows. I drove past once, not on purpose. I was visiting my aunt and took the old highway by mistake. The Briar Glen sign was gone, but room 12 was still there. Fresh paint, new curtains, a little porch light glowing beside the door, and parked in front of it was an old brown sedan I had never seen before. Clean, polished, completely out of place among the newer cars. As I passed, the door opened. A man stepped out in a dark wool coat. Then a woman followed him, blonde hair pinned back, cream cardigan buttoned to her neck. They stood there under the porch light, watching my car go by. I wanted to look away. I couldn't. Even after all that time, even with traffic behind me and daylight fading across the road, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the office window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. I don't work nights anymore. I don't stay in roadside motels. And whenever someone tells me they like traveling on Fridays because the roads are quiet, I just nod and change the subject. Because sometimes the scariest part isn't that people vanish. It's that somewhere, someone is still waiting for a room key. And they always know when it's Friday. Story 3. Have you ever noticed something in a room that shouldn't be there? Not something dramatic. Not blood on the carpet or a face in the window. I mean something small enough that you almost feel stupid for noticing it. A loose tile. A vent that doesn't make sense. A door where no door should be. I was 26 when this happened, driving alone from Oregon down to Arizona for a new job. This was in late November, during one of those storms that makes the highway feel like it's being erased in front of you. I'd been on the road for almost 10 hours, living off gas station coffee and those dry little sandwiches wrapped in plastic. By the time I reached a small town in northern Nevada, I was done. My eyes burned. My shoulders hurt from gripping the steering wheel. Every passing truck threw sheets of water across my windshield, and the wipers could barely keep up. The town wasn't much. A long main road, a diner with half its neon sign dead, a closed mechanic shop, and a motel sitting at the edge of everything like it had been forgotten there. The sign said Pine Rest Motor Lodge, even though there were no pines anywhere. Just black desert, low hills, and rain coming down hard enough to make the parking lot look like a lake. I almost kept driving. I wish I had. The lobby smelled like old carpet, cigarette smoke, and lemon cleaner. There was a bell on the counter, but before I even touched it, a man came out from a back room wiping his hands on a towel. He was probably in his 60s, thin, with gray hair combed straight back and a face that looked too still. Not unfriendly exactly. Just tired in a way that made him seem like he had no interest in anything. "Need a room?" he asked. I said yes, just for one night. He looked me over, then looked past me through the glass doors at the storm. Bad night to be traveling. I laughed a little and said, "Yeah, I figured that out about an hour ago." He didn't laugh. He slid a paper across the counter for me to sign, took my card, and handed me an actual metal key attached to a green plastic tag. Room 12. Then he paused before letting go of it. "If you hear anything outside, don't open up," he said. I thought he meant because of the storm, or maybe drifters. Some motels have that vibe, you know? The kind where you don't leave valuables in the car. So I said, "Got it." He held my eyes for a second too long, then let go of the key. Room 12 was at the far end of the building, under a metal awning that rattled in the wind. I parked right in front of it, grabbed my duffel bag, and ran through the rain. Inside, it was exactly what you'd expect from a cheap motel room. Brown carpet, 2 lamps with yellow shades, a bedspread with a pattern that looked like it had been chosen in 1983 and never questioned. A small table by the window, a bathroom on the left. It wasn't clean in the comforting way. It was clean in the someone wiped down the obvious parts way. But it was warm, dry, and it had a bed. I locked the door behind me, dropped my bag, and stood there for a second just listening to the rain hit the roof. That was when I noticed the second door. It was on the wall opposite the bathroom, beside the closet. Plain white, no number on it, no sign, no chain lock or deadbolt on my side. Just a doorknob, painted over so many times it looked swollen. At first, I thought it was one of those connecting room doors. You see them in hotels all the time, especially older ones. But this one felt wrong. For one thing, there was no second door next to it. Usually connecting rooms have 2 doors, one on each side, so both guests can lock their own. This was just one door. For another thing, when I stepped closer, I noticed there was no gap at the bottom. No light, no sound, nothing. I tried the knob. Locked. I told myself it was probably a maintenance closet or some old layout they didn't use anymore. I was tired. The storm had me on edge. The owner had been weird. That was all. Still, I checked the back of the motel map on the desk. It was a simple floor plan printed on cheap paper, probably for fire exits. 1 long row of rooms, 1 through 14. Ice machine near the lobby. Laundry room behind the office. Room 12 had 1 entrance. No connecting room. No storage space. No hallway behind it. Just 1 rectangle. 1 door. I stood there staring at the map longer than I should have. Then I folded it up, tossed it back on the desk, and said out loud, "You're exhausted." I showered, changed into dry clothes, and called my older sister, Megan, just to let someone know where I was. She lived in Phoenix and had been pushing me to check in every night during the drive. When I told her the motel was creepy, she laughed and said, "Every motel in the middle of nowhere is creepy. That's like the law." I mentioned the second door, trying to make it sound funny. She got quiet for half a second, then said, "Put a chair in front of it." That made me laugh, but she didn't. "I'm serious," she said. "Just do it." So I did. I dragged the little table chair across the carpet and wedged it under the doorknob. It looked ridiculous, like something from a bad movie, but I felt better after doing it. A little. By then it was almost midnight. The rain had gotten worse, and every so often thunder rolled over the motel, so deep it made the window buzz. I turned the TV on low, mostly for background noise, and lay in bed with the lamp still on. I don't know when I fell asleep, but I know exactly what woke me up. 3 knocks. Not from the front door. From the second door. They were slow. Polite, almost. Knock. 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 I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. For a few seconds, I didn't move. My brain did that thing where it tries to explain something before it lets you be afraid. Pipes. Storm. A branch hitting the wall. Then it happened again. Knock. 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 The chair under the knob shifted slightly. Not much. Just enough to make one of the legs squeak against the carpet. My heart sank into my stomach as the room went completely still, and I realized I wasn't waking from a dream. Someone was on the other side of that door. I sat up slowly. The TV was still on, flickering blue light across the walls. The room looked the same, but it didn't feel like my room anymore. It felt like I had accidentally stepped into someone else's space. I whispered, "Hello." I don't know why I did that. I hated myself the second the word left my mouth. No answer. Then a sound came through the door. Not a voice. Not exactly. Breathing. Slow, wet breathing, close to the crack where the door met the frame. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. No service. Of course. 1 little empty triangle where bars should have been. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the other side made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. The doorknob turned. Not fast. Not violently. just slowly, like whoever was there expected it to open. The chair held. The knob turned back. Then something tapped near the lower part of the door. A fingernail, maybe. Tap, tap, tap. I got out of bed as quietly as I could and moved toward the front door. My plan was simple: leave. Get in my car. Drive to the lobby or the police station or literally anywhere else. But as I reached for my keys on the table, I noticed something outside the front window. A shadow standing under the awning. Someone was outside my room. I could only see the lower half of them through the gap in the curtains. Dark pants, work boots, standing completely still in the rainlight. I stopped breathing. There was someone behind the second door and someone outside my front door. For a moment, I just stood there in the middle of the room, barefoot on the carpet, holding my keys so tight they cut into my palm. Then the person outside knocked too. 3 knocks. Same rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. I backed away so fast my shoulder hit the wall. The knocking from the second door answered. 3 knocks from inside the wall. It was like they were signaling each other. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. It was the only place left. I sat on the edge of the tub and tried calling 911. Still no service. I tried Megan. Nothing. I tried sending a text with the motel name and room number, but it just sat there unsent. Outside the bathroom, the room was quiet except for the storm. Then I heard the front door lock click. Not the chain, not the deadbolt, the main lock. Someone had a key. The door opened about an inch before the security chain caught. A strip of cold air slid into the room. I covered my mouth with both hands. Someone pushed against the chain once. Not hard. Testing it. Then a man's voice said, very softly, "You awake?" I knew that voice. It was the owner. My whole body went cold. He pushed the door again. The chain held, but the sound of it straining made my knees weak. Then he said, "Storm knocked out some lines. Just checking rooms." He waited. I didn't say anything. A few seconds passed. Then, from the second door, a different voice whispered, "He's in there." I can't explain what that did to me. It was like my mind separated from my body for a second. The fear became so big it was almost quiet. The owner didn't respond. The front door closed. I heard the lock turn again. Then footsteps moved away from the room. I waited in the bathroom for maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30. Time stopped working normally. I kept trying my phone, holding it up toward the tiny bathroom window, turning it on and off like that would magically fix the signal. Eventually, one text went through. Just one. To Megan. Room 12 Pine Rest Motel. Call police. Someone trying to get in. Asterisk asterisk. Then my phone showed no service again. A minute later, the doorknob to the bathroom jiggled. I nearly screamed. The front room was dark now. Someone had turned off the lamp. A voice on the other side of the bathroom door said, "Sir?" It was the owner again. Closer now. Inside my room. We had a complaint about noise. His voice was calm. Too calm. I climbed into the bathtub and pulled the shower curtain halfway across, like that would hide me. It was stupid. There was nowhere to go. The bathroom window was tiny and frosted, the kind that opened with a little crank. Even if I broke it, I'd never fit through. The knob twisted again. "Sir, I need you to open the door." I didn't answer. Then I heard another sound. Metal scraping softly against metal. He had a key for the bathroom too. That's when something in me snapped out of the panic. Not bravery. Nothing cool like that. Just survival. I grabbed the metal toilet tank lid with both hands and lifted it off as quietly as I could. It was heavy and awkward. My arms shook. The bathroom lock clicked. The door opened slowly. The owner stepped in holding a flashlight pointed at the floor. He didn't see me at first. He looked toward the sink, then the toilet, then the shower curtain. His face had no expression. When he pulled the curtain back, I swung the tank lid with everything I had. It hit his arm, not his head. The flashlight dropped and rolled across the tile. He shouted, and I shoved past him so hard we both slipped. I hit the doorframe with my shoulder and ran into the room. The second door was open. Not wide, just enough. Behind it was not another room. It was a narrow space between walls, maybe 3 feet wide, running behind the motel rooms like a hidden corridor. Bare wood, pipes, old insulation, darkness, and in that darkness, someone was standing. A man I had never seen before, tall and thin, with a pale face and eyes that caught the TV light. He smiled. Not big, not crazy, just like he recognized me. I ran for the front door. The chain was still on, and my hands were useless, shaking too hard to slide it free. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled with the chain. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was working against me. Behind me, the owner yelled something. The man from the hidden corridor stepped into the room. I got the chain loose, yanked the door open, and ran barefoot into the storm. The parking lot was flooded. Rain hit my face so hard I could barely see. I slipped once, scraped my knee, got back up, and sprinted toward my car. My keys fell from my hand. For one awful second, they disappeared into the water. I dropped to my knees, feeling around blindly, sobbing without even realizing I was making noise. Behind me, room 12's door was open. The owner was standing in the doorway now, holding his arm against his chest. The thin man was behind him, just watching. My fingers closed around the keys. I got into my car and locked the doors. The engine didn't start the first time, or the second. I remember begging it, actually begging my car like it was a person. On the third try, it turned over. As I reversed, the thin man walked out into the rain. Slowly, like he had all the time in the world. He didn't chase me. That was somehow worse. I drove straight over the curb getting out of the lot, and didn't stop until I saw lights from a gas station about 5 miles down the highway. The clerk inside called the police while I stood near the counter dripping water onto the floor, shaking so badly I couldn't hold the paper cup of coffee he gave me. Megan had already called 911. She'd given them the motel name, my room number, everything. 2 deputies went to the Pine Rest Motel around 40 minutes later. Room 12 was empty. The owner told them I had checked in, acted strange, damaged the bathroom, and left without paying for the room. He said there was no second door. When the deputies checked, they found one door. The front door. No connecting door. No maintenance closet. Nothing. I thought they didn't believe me at first. I could see it in their faces. Tired young guy, stormy night, cheap motel, maybe drunk, maybe high, maybe confused. But then one of them asked me to describe the inside of the room. I did. The bed, the lamps, the bathroom, the desk, the floor plan, the second door. He looked at the other deputy. Later, I found out why. There were fresh screw holes in the wall where the second door had been. The paint around that section was slightly different, like something had been removed and covered fast. Behind the motel, they found a narrow service passage running behind several rooms. It had been sealed off from the outside years earlier, at least officially, but someone had been using it. They found a folding chair back there, empty food wrappers, a sleeping bag, cigarette butts, a small battery-powered lamp, and photos, not of me thankfully, other guests, people sleeping, people changing clothes, people sitting on beds, looking at their phones, having no idea someone was behind the wall. The owner was arrested, but the thin man was never found. The owner claimed he didn't know who I was talking about. He said the hidden space had been used by homeless people, and he was trying to handle it quietly, because bad reviews could ruin him. He said he entered my room because he thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Nobody believed all of that, but they couldn't prove everything either. The motel shut down a few months later. I saw an article online about code violations, hidden access spaces, and illegal room modifications. It didn't mention the photos in detail. It didn't mention me. I kept checking for updates for a while, then stopped because it made me feel sick. That was 6 years ago. I still travel for work sometimes, but I don't stay in motels if I can help it. When I check into a hotel, I do the same routine every time. I check behind curtains. I look under the bed. I test every door. I take pictures of the room. I send my location to my sister. And if there's a connecting door, I put a chair under it. I know how that sounds. Paranoid. Maybe it is. But sometimes paranoia is just your brain remembering what danger looked like before anyone else believed you. The part one think about most isn't the owner. It isn't even the hidden corridor. It's the thin man standing in my room, smiling like he knew I wouldn't understand what was happening until it was too late. And every now and then, usually when I'm half asleep in some clean, normal hotel room, I hear it again. 3 soft knocks. Not loud, not angry, polite, like someone waiting on the other side of a door that shouldn't exist. Story 4. The first time the pen moved by itself, I did what any tired person working alone at a motel would do. I stared at it. I blinked a few times. Then I laughed under my breath, because laughing felt safer than admitting I had just watched something impossible happen. You always think you'll scream when something like that happens. You think you'll run, or call someone, or throw whatever haunted object it is across the room. But the truth is, when something truly wrong happens right in front of you, your brain doesn't accept it right away. It tries to file it under normal things. A breeze, a loose counter, a trick of the light, anything but what you actually saw. My name is Mara. I was 26 when this happened, and at the time I was working the overnight desk at the Briarwood Motel, a cheap little place off Route 19 in northern Pennsylvania. It wasn't the kind of motel people planned to stay at. It was the kind they ended up at. Truckers, divorced dads halfway through a custody drive, couples who fought in the parking lot and then checked in like nothing happened, college kids trying to save money, salesmen with tired eyes and wrinkled shirts. The Briarwood had 22 rooms, 1 ice machine that sounded like it was dying, and a vending machine that stole dollars unless you kicked the bottom left corner first. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Most nights were boring in a way that almost felt peaceful. I'd sit behind the front desk with bad coffee, my laptop, and the little TV mounted in the corner, playing reruns at low volume. Outside, the neon sign buzzed red through the rain or snow or fog, making the parking lot look like it belonged in an old crime documentary. I didn't mind the job at first. Honestly, I kind of liked it. Nobody bothered me much. The owner, Mr. Halden, was cheap but not cruel. My co-worker Denise handled most of the day shift, and she used to joke that the motel had bad wallpaper and worse secrets, which I thought was just her being dramatic. The place was old. That was all. Old buildings make noises. Pipes knock. Ice machines groan. Doors settle. Lights flicker. You tell yourself things like that until you don't have the luxury anymore. It started on a Wednesday night in late October. Cold rain had been falling since sundown, the kind that makes the roads shine black and empty. Around 1 a.m., I was restocking key cards in the little drawer behind the desk when one of them slipped down behind the counter. I crouched to grab it and noticed that one of the bottom panels under the desk was loose. Not broken exactly, just slightly pulled away like someone had pried at it before and shoved it back. I probably should have left it alone. Instead, I hooked my fingers behind it and tugged. The panel came off with a soft wooden crack, and a smell pushed out that made me lean back. Dust, old paper, and something damp, like a basement after a storm. Behind the panel was a narrow space. Inside it was a book. A big one. It had a faded burgundy cover, the corners worn down to gray, and there was no title on the front. Just a thin black ribbon tied around it. I remember thinking it looked too formal for that motel, like something from an old law office or church. I set it on the counter and wiped the dust off with a napkin. It was a guest log, not the computer system we used, obviously. This was from decades ago, back when people signed their names by hand. The first few pages were normal. Names, dates, room numbers. Some had addresses. Some had notes like paid cash or late arrival. I flipped through it, mildly interested at first. Then I noticed the dates weren't in order. A page from 1983, then 1997, then 2004, then 1979, and the handwriting changed every few lines. Some names were written neatly. Some were shaky. Some looked like they'd been pressed so hard into the paper that the pen almost tore through. The weirdest part was that there were no checkout dates. Only check-in. I told myself it was just some old abandoned record book and placed it under the counter. I was going to show it to Denise in the morning. Then I saw the last name on the last written page. Evan Rusk, room 14, October 7th, 2016, 2:13 a.m. I knew that name, not personally, but I had seen it before. A laminated missing person flyer was still taped inside the employee cabinet, buried under old schedules and takeout menus. It showed a man in his 30s with a close-cropped beard and kind of nervous eyes. I'd asked Denise about it once, and she said he stayed at the Briarwood years before I worked there and vanished overnight. His car was left in the lot. His suitcase was left in the room. Bed barely slept in. No signs of forced entry. No body. No charges. Nothing. I remember my stomach going cold in this slow, spreading way. I opened the cabinet and dug around until I found the flyer. Same name. Same date. I went back to the book and turned a few pages, scanning faster now. Clara Whitcomb, room 6, May 3rd, 2004, 2:13 a.m. I typed her name into my phone. Missing woman. Last seen at a roadside motel in Pennsylvania. My hands started to feel numb. Nathan Bell, room 21, January 12th, 1997, 2:13 a.m. Missing. Tessa Monroe, room 9, August 18th, 1989, 2:13 a.m. Missing. Every name I checked belonged to someone who had disappeared while staying at the Briarwood. Not nearby. Not in the same town. At the motel. The same motel where I was sitting alone at 2 in the morning with rain tapping the windows and the neon sign buzzing like a trapped insect. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the hallway behind the office creaked, and I froze so hard my neck hurt. There were no guest rooms behind the office. Just the supply closet, laundry room, and a back door that led to the dumpsters. I listened. The TV murmured quietly. The rain ticked on the glass. Then there was another creak. Slow, careful, like someone shifting their weight. I called out, "Hello." No answer. I grabbed the little metal flashlight from the drawer and stepped around the desk. The hallway was dark except for the yellow emergency light near the back door. The laundry room door was half open. I knew I had left it closed. My heart sank into my stomach as the office door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, barely breathing. Then the phone rang. I jumped so badly I almost dropped the flashlight. It was the front desk line. I ran back and picked it up, trying to sound normal. Briarwood Motel, front desk. For a second, there was only static. Then a man whispered, "Don't write in it." I couldn't speak. The voice was close to the receiver, dry and trembling. "Do you hear me?" he said. "Don't write in it." "Who is this?" The line crackled. Then he said, "It already knows you found it," and hung up. I stood there with the phone against my ear long after the call ended. At that point, a smarter person probably would have left. But I had bills, no car until my roommate picked me up in the morning, and that stupid part of the brain that keeps saying, "Don't be dramatic." So I called Mr. Halden. He didn't answer. I called Denise. She answered on the 4th ring, groggy and annoyed. "What's wrong?" I told her about the book, the names, the missing people, the call. She was silent for a while. Then she said very quietly, "Put the book back." That scared me more than anything else she could have said. "What do you mean, put it back?" "Mara," she said, and I could hear that she was sitting up now. "Listen to me. Put it back where you found it and leave it alone. You knew about this?" "No, not really. I mean, I heard things." "What things?" She exhaled shakily. "Old stories. People used to say the motel had a bad room. Then they said it wasn't the room, it was the desk. I don't know. I never believed it. The desk? Just put it back." Before I could answer, the lights went out. Not flickered. Went out. The whole lobby dropped into darkness, except for the red glow of the neon sign bleeding through the front windows. Denise was still on the phone, but her voice became garbled, like it was underwater. "Mara? Mara, get out of." The call died. For a moment, I couldn't move. The street looked ordinary outside, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face, and sometimes it wears no face at all. The power at the Briarwood went out sometimes during storms, so there was an emergency lantern under the counter. I turned it on and set it beside the guest log. That was when I saw the pen. I hadn't noticed it before. It was lying across the open page. A cheap black ballpoint pen, the kind we kept in a mug beside the card machine. Except I didn't remember putting it there. The book was still open to Evan Rusk's name. Rain tapped steadily against the windows. Somewhere in the building, a door thumped once, soft and distant. Then the pen rolled, just a little. I stared at it. The counter was level. Nothing else moved. The pen rolled again, stopped near the center of the blank page, and slowly lifted until the tip touched paper. My throat closed. It began to write. Not fast, not wildly. Slowly, carefully, like an invisible hand was filling out a form. Mara Ellison. My full name. Not Mara like my name tag said. Mara Ellison. Room 12. October 23rd. 2:13 a.m. I don't think I screamed. I think I made some ugly little sound and stumbled backward into the key rack. The clock above the office door clicked. 2:13 a.m. The back hallway creaked again. This time, footsteps followed. Not loud, not rushed, just steady. One step, then another, coming toward the lobby. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, but there was no service. The screen showed one bar, then none. I tried again anyway, my fingers shaking so hard I almost dropped it. Nothing. The footsteps stopped just out of sight. I could see the dark rectangle of the hallway entrance from behind the desk. The lantern light didn't reach far enough. It just faded into black. Then a voice said, "Front desk?" It was a woman's voice. Thin, polite, almost cheerful. I didn't answer. "Hello," she called again. "I need a key." My skin prickled. There were only 4 occupied rooms that night. A trucker in 3, an older couple in 8, a woman with a dog in 17, a guy in 20 who checked in drunk and passed out half an hour later. Nobody in room 12. The voice came again. "I'm locked out of 12. I looked down at the book. My name, room 12. Something moved at the edge of the hallway. A hand appeared first. Pale fingers curled around the wall. Then a face leaned slowly into view. I wish I could say it looked like a ghost, because that would make it easier to explain. But it didn't. It looked like a person. A woman maybe in her 40s, soaked from head to toe, hair plastered to her cheeks, wearing an old green coat that hung strangely on her body. She smiled at me. Not wide, not crazy, just patient, like we knew each other. I recognized her from the guest log before I knew how. Clara Whitcomb. I had seen her missing person photo less than 10 minutes earlier. My brain tried to reject it. It had to. A missing woman from 2004 couldn't be standing in a motel hallway in 2023, asking me for a key. But there she was. And then she said my name. "Mara," she whispered. "You're supposed to come with me." I ran. Not gracefully, not bravely. I ran like an animal. I vaulted around the desk, slammed into the lobby door, and shoved it open into the rain. The cold hit me so hard I gasped. I slipped on the wet concrete, caught myself on the railing, and sprinted toward the parking lot. Behind me, the lobby door opened. I heard it, that soft metal squeal. I didn't look back. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumbled for my phone again. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Still no service. The motel lot looked empty and wrong under the red neon sign. Rain fell through the glow in slanted lines. The rooms sat in a long L shape, their doors closed, curtains drawn, windows dark. Except room 12. The curtains were open. A light was on inside. I stopped so suddenly my shoes skidded. Room 12 was supposed to be empty. It had been out of order for weeks because the heater didn't work. I knew that because I was the one who put the sign on the door. But now the door was open just a few inches. Warm yellow light spilled out onto the walkway. and from inside, someone knocked. 3 slow taps. I backed away. Then my phone buzzed. 1 bar. I called 911 again, and this time it connected. The dispatcher's voice felt unreal, too calm, too far away. 911, what's your emergency? I started talking too fast, crying and trying not to sound insane. I said someone was in the motel. I said I was alone. I said I needed police. She asked if I was in immediate danger. I looked toward the lobby. The woman in the green coat stood outside now, under the overhang, staring at me through the rain. Yes, I whispered. The dispatcher told me to get somewhere safe. There was nowhere safe. The road was empty. The nearest gas station was 2 miles down, closed after midnight. The trucker's room was closest, room 3, so I ran there and pounded on the door until my fist hurt. Please, I shouted. Open the door. For a few terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Then the curtain shifted. A man's face appeared, confused and angry. I must have looked half insane, standing there soaked and shaking, because his expression changed fast. He opened the door with the chain still on. What the hell happened? Call the police, I said. Please. Someone is in the motel. He looked past me toward the lobby. The woman was gone. The trucker let me in, locked the door, and pulled the dresser in front of it without asking more questions. His name was Ron, and he had a gray beard and a voice like gravel. He called 911 from his phone, which had service, and kept me away from the window. But I couldn't stop looking. Across the parking lot, room 12's door was open wider now. The light inside flickered. Then someone stepped into the doorway. Not Clara. A man. Then another person behind him. Then a woman. Then what looked like a teenage boy. They stood there in the doorway of room 12, all of them still and quiet, their faces pale in the yellow light. I knew, without being told, that they were the names in the book. Every vanished guest. Waiting. Ron saw them too. He didn't say anything at first. He just lowered his phone slowly, his face draining of color. The police arrived 9 minutes later. By then, room 12 was dark. The door was locked. The lobby lights were back on, and the guest log was gone. They searched the motel. They searched the laundry room, the office, the dumpsters, the empty rooms, even the woods behind the property. They found nobody. No woman in a green coat. No people in room 12. No footprints that made sense in the rain. Mr. Halden showed up around 3:30 in the morning wearing sweatpants and a winter jacket, furious until he saw my face. Then he got quiet. Too quiet. When an officer asked him about the old guest book, he said he didn't know what I was talking about. Denise arrived just before sunrise. She hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. Then she looked at the front desk, at the loose panel under it, and started crying. I quit that morning. I never went back inside the Briarwood. The police took statements, of course. Mine, Ron's, Denise's. The older couple in room 8 claimed they heard knocking, but thought it was rain. The woman in 17 said her dog spent half the night growling at the wall. The man in 20 remembered nothing. Officially, nothing happened. That was the phrase they used. Nothing happened. No break-in. No assault. No missing person. No physical evidence. But 2 weeks later, the Briarwood Motel shut down. Mr. Halden told people it was because of electrical issues and low business. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. A year after that, the building caught fire. I saw the article online. Abandoned motel destroyed in early morning blaze. No injuries reported. The photo showed the lobby collapsed inward, the old neon sign melted in black. I should have felt relieved. I didn't, because 3 months after the fire, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single page torn from an old guest log. The paper smelled like dust and smoke. At the top was my name, written in that same careful handwriting. Mara Ellison, room 12, October 23rd, 2:13 a.m. Below it, someone had added one more line. Checked in. No checkout. I moved after that, changed my number, deleted most of my social media. I don't stay in roadside motels anymore, not even nice ones. When I travel, I book chain hotels with bright lobbies and cameras everywhere. I always check behind the front desk if I can see it. I always look for old books, loose panels, places where something could be hidden. I know how that sounds. I know most people will say I was tired, scared, and alone. They'll say I connected things that weren't connected. They'll say Ron probably saw shadows. They'll say the page was a prank. Maybe. I've told myself that more times than I can count. But sometimes late at night, I wake up at exactly 2:13. Not 2:12, not 2:14, 2:13. And for a few seconds, before I fully remember where I am, I hear rain on glass. I smell dust and old paper. I see a cheap black pen standing upright on a blank page, waiting. Even after escaping, even with the memory of police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me can't stop replaying the face I saw in that hallway. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what happened. It's knowing that somewhere, in some locked drawer or burned out wall or motel office nobody has opened in years, there might still be a book with names in it, and a blank line waiting for yours. Story 5. The first time I heard my name coming from inside that ice machine room, I thought I had imagined it. That's what people always say, and honestly, it sounds stupid until it happens to you. Because when you're standing barefoot in a hotel hallway at 1:17 in the morning, holding a plastic ice bucket in one hand and your phone in the other, your brain will do anything to keep the world normal. It'll blame the air conditioner. It'll blame old pipes. It'll blame sleep. It won't immediately accept that something behind a locked door just whispered your name. My name is Hannah. I was 16 when this happened, and I was staying with my mom at a budget hotel outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Not one of those creepy abandoned-looking motels you see in horror videos. It was just a normal roadside hotel off the highway, the kind with beige walls, vending machines, tired carpet, and free breakfast that tasted like cardboard. We were there because my older brother was visiting a college nearby, and my mom wanted to make a weekend out of it. I remember being annoyed about the whole thing. I had school stuff, I wanted to stay home, and I was too old to be sharing a hotel room with my mom, but not old enough to be left alone for a weekend. The hotel had 3 floors. We were on the second, room 214. That number matters. Our room was near the end of the hall, not right next to the elevator, but close enough that I could hear the ding every now and then. Across from the elevators was a little alcove with vending machines and a narrow door marked ICE. Not ice machine, not employees only, just a white door with the word ICE in blue letters. The first night was boring. My mom watched some cooking show at low volume. I scrolled on my phone, and outside our window, cars hissed by on the wet road. It had been raining all evening, that steady cold rain that makes everything smell like pavement and exhaust. Around midnight, my mom fell asleep. I couldn't. Hotel rooms always feel weird to me. They look clean, but you know strangers have been there. The curtains were too thick, the mini fridge buzzed too loudly, and the light under the door made this thin yellow line across the carpet. At about 1, I decided to get ice. I don't even remember why. I think I had a soda and wanted it colder. It was one of those tiny normal decisions that later felt impossible to understand. Because if I had just stayed in bed, none of this would have happened the way it did. I grabbed the ice bucket, slipped into my hoodie, and opened the door as quietly as I could. The hallway was empty. Hotels after midnight have a sound to them. Not silence exactly. More like everything is padded. Distant plumbing, a TV murmuring behind a wall, the hum of lights overhead. The carpet had this old damp smell, like it had been cleaned too many times and never fully dried. I walked to the alcove. The vending machine lights were bright, buzzing softly. The IC door was beside them, closed. I pulled it open. Inside was a tiny room with an ice machine against the wall. Concrete floor. A drain. A fluorescent light that flickered once every few seconds. There was another door at the back, smaller and painted gray, with no handle on my side. I figured it was maintenance. The ice machine was loud when it started dumping cubes. I remember leaning against the wall, half asleep, watching the bucket fill. Then I heard it. A whisper. Not loud, not dramatic, just a breathy sound from somewhere behind the machine, or maybe behind that back door. Hannah. I froze. The ice kept falling, clattering into the bucket like nothing had happened. I stared at the back door. For a second, I genuinely thought maybe my mom had followed me and was messing with me. But the room was too small. I was alone. I grabbed the bucket before it even finished filling and went back to our room fast, trying not to run because running would mean I believed something was wrong. When I got back, my mom was still asleep. I locked the door, latched the security bar, and stood there with my heart beating so hard it felt embarrassing. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I checked the peephole. Nothing. Just the empty hallway and the ugly patterned carpet. The next morning, I almost didn't tell my mom. It sounded too childish. But at breakfast, while she was peeling a banana and complaining about the coffee, I said, "I heard something weird in the ice room last night." She looked up. "What kind of weird?" "Like someone whispered my name." She paused for maybe half a second, then smiled in that mom way. "You were half asleep." "I was awake." "Well, hotels make noises. Pipes, vents, other rooms." That became the official explanation. Pipes. Later that morning, when we passed the front desk, my mom actually mentioned it to the manager. His name tag said Gary. He was a heavy-set man with gray hair and a tired smile, the kind of guy who looked like he'd heard every complaint possible. "My daughter said she heard whispering near the ice machine last night," my mom told him. Gary didn't even look surprised. "Oh yeah," he said. "Second floor ice room is noisy. Old plumbing runs behind there. People think they hear voices all the time." I hated the way he said that. People think they hear voices all the time. Like this was a known thing. My mom laughed a little. "See? Mystery solved." Gary looked at me and gave this polite smile. "Nothing to worry about, sweetheart." I know people use sweetheart casually, especially older men, but the word made my skin crawl. Not because of him exactly, just because I had heard my name whispered the night before, and now everyone was acting like I was being dramatic. That day was normal. We toured the campus. My brother acted too cool to hang out with us. My mom took pictures of everything. By the time we got back to the hotel, I had almost convinced myself that Gary was right. Almost. That night, around 12:30, the noises started. At first, it was just footsteps in the hallway. Not unusual. People come back late to hotels all the time. But these footsteps were slow. They stopped outside our door, then continued. A minute later, they came back the other way and stopped again. I muted my phone and listened. My mom was asleep, breathing heavily through her nose. Then came a soft knock. 3 taps. Not loud enough to wake my mom. Just loud enough for me. I didn't move. Another 3 taps. I whispered, "Mom." She didn't wake up. I slid out of bed and crept to the door. My heart sank into my stomach as I stood there, staring at the lock, realizing how thin a hotel door really is. There's this stupid sense of safety because there's a chain and a deadbolt, but it's still just one door between you and whoever is outside. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the ice room door across the hall was open. Not wide, just cracked. The light inside flickered. I stepped back. I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I grabbed my phone and started recording through the peephole. I thought if I caught the door moving or someone walking out, my mom would believe me. For almost 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the ice machine room door slowly closed. Not slammed, not pulled fast. It clicked shut like someone had gently eased it closed from inside. I stopped recording and woke my mom up. This time, she was irritated at first, then annoyed, then finally concerned when she saw I was shaking. She checked the hallway herself and saw nothing. She called the front desk. Gary answered. He said he'd send someone up. Nobody came, or if they did, they never knocked. The next morning, my mom was mad. Not scared, just mad in that adult way where fear turns into customer service anger. She went down to the front desk and asked why no one checked the hallway. Gary wasn't there. A young woman named Denise was working. She looked confused and said, "We don't have maintenance overnight." My mom said, "The manager said he would send someone up." Denise frowned. "Gary left at 11. That was the first moment my mom stopped treating it like a joke. She asked if someone else could have answered the phone. Denise said calls from rooms went to the front desk, and she had been there all night. She said she never spoke to us. My mom came back upstairs quiet. "What?" I asked. She just said, "Pack some of your stuff. We might switch hotels." But we didn't switch right away, because everything becomes more complicated when you're tired and trying not to overreact. My brother still had another campus meeting. The room was already paid for. The hotel was busy because of some youth hockey tournament in town, and places nearby were either full or too expensive. So we stayed one more night. That was the worst decision. That evening, my mom went to get dinner with my brother. I stayed back because I had a headache and didn't feel like sitting in a restaurant while they talked about scholarships. She almost made me come with her, but I begged and finally she agreed. "Lock the door," she said. "Don't open it for anyone." I rolled my eyes because I was 16, and 16-year-olds are idiots sometimes. I know. For about an hour, nothing happened. I watched videos on my phone, ate chips from the vending machine, and tried to enjoy having the room to myself. Then the room phone rang. That old beige hotel phone on the nightstand. It rang so suddenly I jumped. I stared at it for a second before picking up. "Hello." There was static. Then a man's voice said, very softly, "Hannah in 214? I couldn't breathe. The voice wasn't Gary's. It wasn't anyone I recognized. It was thin and close, like the person had their mouth almost touching the receiver. I hung up. Immediately, the phone rang again. I backed away from it. It rang and rang and rang. Then it stopped. A few seconds later, my cell phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Mom, everything okay?" I typed back with shaking hands. "Me." Someone called the room phone and said my name and room number. She replied almost instantly, "Mom, do not open the door. I'm coming back now." I moved to the door and checked the lock. Deadbolt. Security latch. Everything was in place. Then I heard it, from across the hallway. A whisper. "Hannah." I stepped to the peephole before I could talk myself out of it. The ice room door was open again. This time, there was a man standing inside. Not fully visible. Just part of him, because the door was only open a few inches. I could see one eye, part of his cheek, and fingers curled around the edge of the door. He was looking straight at my room. Straight at me. Even through the warped little peephole, I could tell he wasn't blinking. I stumbled backward and almost tripped over my backpack. I called 911. My voice came out so quiet the operator had to ask me to repeat myself. While I was on the phone, there was a knock at the door. Not 3 taps this time. A normal knock. Then a man's voice said, "Hotel security. Open up, please." I almost did. That's the part that still bothers me. Because he sounded calm. Professional. Annoyed even. Like I was the inconvenience. The 911 operator heard him and asked, "Are you expecting security?" I whispered, "No." She said, "Do not open the door." The man knocked again, harder. "Ma'am, we had a complaint from this room. I need you to open the door." I didn't answer. Then his voice changed. "Not a lot. Just enough." "Hannah," he said, quieter now. "Open the door." My whole body went cold. I went into the bathroom and locked that door too, which was stupid because it was just one of those flimsy push locks, but I needed another barrier. I sat on the floor between the toilet and the tub with my phone pressed against my ear. The man started tapping on the room door. Slowly. One tap, then another, like he had all the time in the world. The operator kept telling me police were on the way. My mom was calling me over and over, but I couldn't answer because I didn't want to leave the emergency call. Then I heard something slide under the hotel room door. A piece of paper. I didn't go look. Not at first. The tapping stopped. For maybe 10 seconds, there was nothing. Then the security latch on the hotel room door rattled. Not from outside. From the inside. That's when I realized someone had gotten the door open. Not all the way. The deadbolt must have been bypassed, or maybe the latch was the only thing holding, I don't know. But I heard the door press against the metal bar, then stop. A soft voice came through the gap. "I know you're in there." I covered my mouth so he wouldn't hear me crying. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Then from somewhere outside, I heard my mom screaming, "Hannah!" Footsteps pounded down the hallway. A man cursed. The hotel room door slammed shut. Then there were more voices, loud ones, and someone yelling, "Police! Stop!" I stayed in the bathroom until an officer opened the door and said my name. Even then, I didn't come out right away. When I finally did, my mom grabbed me so hard it hurt. The hallway was full of police lights flashing red and blue through the windows at the far end. Guests were peeking out of rooms. A little boy in hockey pajamas was crying while his dad held him. The ice room door was open. Inside, the ice machine had been pulled away from the wall. Behind it was a narrow service door. I had never noticed it because the machine blocked most of it. It led into a maintenance corridor that ran behind several rooms on the second floor. The hotel used to have a laundry chute system or something years ago, and parts of the old service space had been sealed off badly. Not completely. The man had been using it to move around without being seen. The police caught him on the stairwell between the second and third floor. He wasn't hotel security. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't an employee anymore. That was the word that stuck with me. Anymore. He had worked there briefly the year before as a night maintenance contractor. Not full-time, just temporary. He knew the layout. He knew where the dead spots in the cameras were. He knew the old service corridor existed. And somehow he had gotten back in. In the ice room, police found a backpack. Inside were gloves, a flashlight, a cheap prepaid phone, and several hotel key cards. They also found pages torn from the front desk occupancy printouts. Some were old, but some were recent. Our room number was circled. My name was written beside it. The reason he knew my name was simple, and somehow worse than anything supernatural. At check-in, my mom had said, "It's just me and my daughter, Hannah." I remember standing there, bored, looking at the brochure rack while Gary typed on the computer. The man must have been nearby, in the lobby, behind a door, somewhere close enough to listen. The recording I made through the peephole had picked up the sound from the ice room. It was faint, but clear enough. You could hear the hum of the vending machines, then a whisper. "Hannah, 214. I still have never listened to the whole thing again. The paper he slid under the door had only one sentence on it. "You should have opened it the first time." Nobody told me exactly what he planned to do. Adults talked around it. Police used words like intent and opportunity and prior complaints. My mom wouldn't let me read the report, but I learned enough. There had been other women and girls who complained about noises near the ice room. A guest on the third floor had reported her door handle moving at night. Another said someone called her room and breathed into the phone. Nothing had been connected because nothing serious had happened yet. That's the part people don't understand. A lot of danger looks small at first. A whisper, a knock, a door cracked open. Things people can explain away. Old plumbing, overactive imagination, teenage drama. We left that hotel before sunrise. My mom drove for almost 2 hours before pulling into a gas station and crying in the parking lot. I had never seen her like that before. She kept saying, "I'm sorry," over and over, like she had personally invited him in. I didn't sleep in a hotel for years after that. Even now, I hate rooms near vending machines. I hate ice buckets. I hate when hotel phones ring. I check behind curtains and under beds, even though I know that sounds ridiculous. I look at staff-only doors and wonder where they lead. And every time someone tells a scared girl that a sound is just pipes, I feel this cold pressure in my chest. Because maybe it is. Most of the time, it probably is. But sometimes the thing making the noise knows your name. Sometimes it knows your room number. And sometimes it waits behind a door with the lights flickering, whispering softly, hoping you'll be too embarrassed to trust your own fear.